The town of Willow Creek was small, almost invisible on most maps, and had always been the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else. Nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, it seemed like the kind of place time had forgotten. Life moved slowly here, marked by the rising and setting of the sun, the changing seasons, and the simple routines of its residents. People would wake early, tending to their farms or shops, exchange greetings as they passed on narrow streets, and gather in the evening at local diners or around fires in their backyards. Children played in open fields without fear, running freely while their parents kept a watchful eye, and the sound of laughter and the occasional barking dog formed a gentle soundtrack to daily life. There was a kind of peace in Willow Creek that most people longed for, a sense of safety that made it feel almost untouchable. At the heart of the town lived people who had become a family in more ways than one. Farmers who had tilled the same soil for generations, shared stories with new arrivals. Teachers imparted lessons not just from textbooks but from life itself, and shopkeepers who had been serving customers for decades knew each person's preferences, likes, and dislikes. Everyone had a role, and everyone knew that role, and there was a comforting rhythm to that predictability. Problems did happen, of course, as they do everywhere, but they were small, manageable, and solvable with the combined effort of the townspeople. A broken fence could be fixed, a lost animal found, or a misunderstanding resolved with a conversation. Life, though simple, had its own quiet beauty, despite the calm and stability. There was a subtle awareness in Willow Creek, a recognition that the world beyond their hills and forests was not always as safe. Stories of wars, natural disasters, and strange, unpredictable events reached them through newspapers, television, or visitors from outside. People would nod and shake their heads, feeling thankful that such chaos had not touched their town. But there was always that faint undercurrent of vulnerability, a quiet understanding that peace was something fragile. Parents reminded their children to stay close to home. Elderly residents spoke cautiously about the state of the world, and some younger people dreamed of adventure but understood the value of the safety Willow Creek provided. This blend of awareness and appreciation created a strong sense of community, where people took care of each other and respected the rhythms of life they had inherited. Amid this ordinary yet comforting life, there was also an extraordinary network operating silently beyond the notice of the townspeople. Humanity had faced countless crises over the centuries, from natural disasters like hurricanes and earthquakes to conflicts that spanned continents. For generations, governments and organizations had trained specialized units of warriors, individuals chosen for their strength, intelligence, and unwavering courage, to respond to situations that ordinary people could not handle. These were not just soldiers, they were problem solvers, strategists, and protectors, equipped with skills and knowledge far beyond the average human. Most of the time, these warriors remained in the background, their presence only known through stories, reports, or rare glimpses in news footage. They were humanity's insurance policy, a secret safeguard ready to act when the world faced threats that could not be contained by conventional means. Willow Creek, however, was unaware that it was about to become the stage for one of these extreme interventions. The town had always seemed ordinary, tucked away in its quiet corner of the world, and nothing about it had hinted at the extraordinary events that were about to unfold. Yet, as history often shows, danger does not announce itself with polite warnings or invitations. It comes suddenly, without discrimination, and tests the limits of those caught in its path. In Willow Creek, life was about to shift dramatically, and the seemingly invincible peace would be shattered in a way that no one could have predicted. In the days leading up to the arrival of the threat, there were subtle signs that something was off, though no one could have identified them as such at the time. Birds flew in unusual patterns. Animals seemed restless, and a strange tension hung in the air that could not be explained. Some residents felt uneasy but dismissed it as imagination or coincidence. Others noticed it too, particularly those who spent a lot of time outdoors, like farmers and hikers. The wind seemed different, carrying unfamiliar scents. The nights were quieter, almost eerily still, as if the natural sounds of the forest were holding their breath. The townspeople continued their routines, unaware that these small anomalies were warnings of the chaos that was approaching. At the same time, the story introduces key individuals in Willow Creek whose lives were about to intersect with extraordinary events. Among them was a teacher named Sarah, whose calm presence and gentle wisdom had shaped generations of children. She had lived in Willow Creek her entire life and had a deep connection with the land, the people, and the rhythms of the town. Then there was Tom, a farmer whose family had worked the same fields for decades, whose hands knew every inch of the soil, and whose eyes could read the sky for signs of rain. There was also Emily, a young shopkeeper who had recently taken over her family's store, full of ambition and determination to keep the town connected and thriving. These individuals, along with countless others, represented the heart and soul of Willow Creek. They were ordinary in every sense of the word, yet their ordinary lives were about to be tested in ways that would demand extraordinary courage. While life in the town seemed predictable, the wider world had been preparing, quietly, for crises like the one soon to descend upon Willow Creek. The elite warriors known to very few were in constant readiness, training in secret locations, studying threats and refining their skills. They were humans who had pushed themselves beyond normal limits, achieving physical and mental capabilities that made them almost unmatched. Their training included combat techniques, survival strategies, intelligence gathering, and even psychological preparation for extreme situations. They were equipped with advanced technology and weapons, but what truly set them apart was their ability to think under pressure, adapt to impossible scenarios, and make split-second decisions that could mean life or death. Humanity had learned that when danger escalates beyond normal control, only these individuals could stand between survival and catastrophe. And yet, for Willow Creek, none of this seemed relevant. The townspeople carried on, living life in the simple, familiar way they always had. They took comfort in routines, the predictability of their surroundings, and the bonds they shared with neighbors. Children played without fear, adults worked without hesitation, and even the elderly moved with a sense of calm acceptance. There was no sense of urgency, no indication that their world was about to collide with forces far beyond their understanding. This stark contrast, the ordinary life of Willow Creek and the extraordinary preparedness of humanity's warriors, created the perfect tension. The stage was set for a dramatic clash between the peaceful rhythms of everyday life and the chaotic, unpredictable nature of an overwhelming threat. As the days passed, there were more subtle clues that something was approaching. News from outside towns mentioned strange occurrences, unusual weather patterns, and unexplained accidents. Scientists and experts speculated, but no one could pinpoint the cause. To the people of Willow Creek, these events felt distant and abstract, almost like background noise to their everyday lives. Yet, in the back rooms of government agencies and elite training facilities, reports were being analyzed, and the most dangerous threats were being tracked. It was a reminder that while ordinary life can feel safe, danger rarely respects boundaries, and preparedness often occurs in places that the average person never sees or considers. The tension in Willow Creek was almost tangible. Though unrecognized by most of its residents, everything seemed calm on the surface. Yet beneath that calm, the first threads of an extraordinary story were beginning to weave themselves. The peaceful town, with its simple routines and close-knit community, was unknowingly standing on the edge of a monumental challenge. The ordinary people, the familiar streets, and the quiet landscapes were about to collide with the extraordinary forces that humanity had prepared to face only in its most desperate moments. The stage was set, the characters were in place, and the quiet before the storm was a deceptive veil hiding the chaos and courage that were about to erupt. Willow Creek is still at peace, yet the seeds of change have been planted. The ordinary lives of its residents are about to be tested in ways that will reveal the strength, courage, and resilience of humans when faced with unimaginable danger. At this point, readers are drawn into the world, feeling both the comfort of the town and the looming threat that will soon shatter that comfort. The contrast between everyday life and the extraordinary forces preparing to intervene creates a powerful setup, making the reader eager to witness what will unfold when one desperate cry calls humanity's deadliest warriors into action. Life in Willow Creek had always been calm, predictable, and comforting, but all of that was about to change. One ordinary morning, as the sun rose over the hills and the morning mist clung to the fields, something strange began to happen. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly, as if the town itself was signaling that it sensed danger. Farmers noticed their animals acting nervously, cows huddling closer together and dogs growling at empty spaces. Birds that had once filled the skies with songs now flew erratically, circling and darting without pattern. A few residents mentioned it casually to neighbors, but the comments were shrugged off. Life, after all, in Willow Creek had always been predictable, and most people believed they were safe in their little corner of the world by noon. However, the strangeness escalated into something undeniable. The sky, which usually reflected calm blues and gentle clouds, began to darken with unusual colors, streaked with fiery orange and deep violet, as if an invisible hand had painted the heavens with warning signs. The wind changed to gusting in odd directions and carrying with it an unfamiliar, acrid scent. The trees swayed violently despite the absence of a storm, their leaves whipping against each other with a metallic rustle that made nerves jump. People in town stopped their routines to look up at the sky, their faces reflecting confusion and worry. Something was wrong, but nobody could identify exactly what it was. The first clear sign of real danger came just after midday. Strange, unexplained tremors shook the town, rattling windows, shaking doorframes, and sending dishes clattering to the floor. A few small landslides occurred on the hills surrounding the town, and water from a nearby stream surged over its banks for no apparent reason. Panic began to creep into people's hearts. Mothers clutched their children, shopkeepers ran to secure their stores, and farmers abandoned their fields, rushing to see if their homes and families were safe. The town that had always felt untouchable suddenly seemed vulnerable. The residents of Willow Creek realized that this was no ordinary storm, earthquake, or accident. They were facing something entirely unknown, something that could not be explained by common sense or local experience. As fear began to spread, the town attempted to respond in every way it could. Emergency services were contacted, though phone lines began to fail mysteriously, and radio signals became unreliable. The town's small police force and volunteer firefighters did what they could, but it quickly became apparent that local efforts were insufficient. The strange phenomena were too powerful, too unpredictable, and too overwhelming for ordinary measures. The tremors continued, small fires erupted in unexpected locations, and strange dark shapes that moved unnaturally were glimpsed in the streets and forests. Panic escalated as people realized that they were facing a threat unlike anything they had ever imagined. Amid this growing chaos, a sense of desperation emerged. Residents began sending messages for help, reaching out to nearby towns, cities, and authorities. But many calls went unanswered or were delayed. The realization dawned that if external assistance did not arrive quickly, Willow Creek might be entirely at the mercy of the mysterious force attacking it. This was the point at which ordinary courage was tested. People who had lived their entire lives in peaceful routines now found themselves making split-second decisions. They organized groups to help evacuate the most vulnerable, brought those who were injured to makeshift shelters, and tried to maintain calm among the terrified residents. The town, in its struggle, demonstrated the resilience of ordinary humans, but they also recognized that their efforts, brave as they were, might not be enough. It was during this period of rising challenge that the first official recognition of the threat reached higher authorities. Reports from Willow Creek were analyzed in specialized centers, where trained experts monitored unusual patterns, weather anomalies, seismic activity, and reports of strange phenomena across the region. The situation was classified as an extreme emergency, something that demanded the attention of humanity's elite forces. These were individuals trained, equipped, and mentally prepared to handle threats far beyond the capability of ordinary people. Their role was not just to fight, but to assess, strategize, and neutralize dangers that could affect entire populations. The cry for help from Willow Creek became a signal that this was a situation where only these specially trained warriors could intervene effectively. Back in the town, as news of external help slowly reached some residents, hope flickered briefly but remained fragile. People continued to face the threat directly, doing what they could to survive. Farmers helped neighbors evacuate livestock, teachers guided children to safe locations, and volunteers created barricades and shelters from whatever materials were available. There was a sense of community that strengthened under pressure. People who had known each other for years suddenly relied on one another in deeper, more immediate ways. Trust and cooperation became critical as every decision could mean life or death. The ordinary routines of Willow Creek had transformed into a battlefield of survival. Even though the exact nature of the enemy remained mysterious, that's the challenge intensified. The story begins to introduce the elite warriors preparing to respond. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were humans trained beyond normal limits. Their training included mastering advanced weaponry, tactical strategy, survival in extreme environments, and psychological resilience under unimaginable stress. They had faced many crises in the past, each one honing their abilities, but the situation in Willow Creek was unique. Reports described phenomena unlike anything previously encountered: shadows that moved independently, tremors with no geological explanation, and environmental disruptions that defied logic. The elite forces began mobilizing, understanding that the ordinary response from local authorities would not be sufficient to contain or neutralize the threat. Meanwhile, the residents of Willow Creek faced mounting danger. Fires spread unpredictably through parts of the town, trees crashed onto roads, and debris blocked escape routes. Shadows that had been glimpsed in the forests now appeared near homes and public spaces, moving faster than any human or animal. Panic began to give way to sheer terror as people realized that the danger was not just natural but seemingly intelligent and targeted. Small groups of residents tried to fight back with whatever tools they had: stick, farming equipment, even firearms, but these efforts had little effect. The town was confronting a force that made ordinary courage and conventional methods almost useless. Amid all this chaos, moments of human bravery shone brightly. Teachers risked their lives to guide children to safety through smoke-filled streets. Shopkeepers returned to burning stores to rescue trapped animals. Farmers, despite being terrified, led neighbors through treacherous terrain to higher ground. Even as fear gripped the town, these acts of courage highlighted the indomitable human spirit. The rising challenge was not just external, it was internal as well. Residents were forced to confront their fears, make decisions under extreme pressure, and act selflessly for the survival of others. The ordinary people of Willow Creek were being tested in ways they had never imagined, and their ability to adapt, endure, and fight back would define the next phase of the story. Communication with the outside world remained sporadic, which added to the tension. Messages were sent to nearby towns and cities, but interference or delays left many pleas for help unanswered. The isolation made the town feel even more vulnerable, and residents began to understand that if immediate help did not arrive, they would face the threat largely on their own. This sense of isolation heightened fear but also strengthened determination. People banded together in tighter groups, sharing resources, knowledge, and courage. Every decision became critical, and every action mattered. In these moments, ordinary individuals discovered extraordinary resilience and ingenuity. The situation in Willow Creek continued to escalate. Natural elements seemed to act in concert with the strange phenomena, flooding streams, cracking earth, swirling winds creating obstacles at every turn. Shadows moved with alarming speed and intelligence, seemingly tracking people and adapting to attempts to avoid them. Fear became a constant companion, yet it was tempered by moments of hope and cooperation. Residents devised improvised warning systems, guided each other through darkened streets, and created safe zones in public buildings. Each small success offered temporary relief, but the overall challenge remained overwhelming. Finally, the day ended with a mixture of exhaustion, fear, and anticipation. People slept fitfully, keeping watch over their families and neighbors, aware that the danger had not passed and might worsen by morning. The town had faced its first full day under extraordinary threat, and though they had survived thus far, it was clear that survival alone would not be enough. Willow Creek was now at the center of a crisis that demanded more than ordinary courage, skill, or preparation. It was a crisis that would require the intervention of humanity's elite warriors, the ones trained to respond when a desperate cry for help could not be answered by anyone else. Willow Creek is no longer just a quiet town, it is a town in desperate need, standing on the edge of an extraordinary conflict. Ordinary life has been replaced by survival under impossible circumstances. The rising challenge has escalated from subtle warnings to overwhelming danger, forcing residents to confront the limits of human courage and endurance. Both the town and the reader are left anticipating the arrival of the elite forces, knowing that only their intervention can prevent total catastrophe. The stage is set for a dramatic confrontation, and the ordinary people of Willow Creek, alongside humanity's best-trained warriors, are about to face their ultimate test. Willow Creek brought a terrifying escalation. What had begun as strange tremors, inexplicably phenomena, and subtle warnings now became an allowed assault that forced the town into a state of panic and survival. The residents were no longer dealing with minor challenges or small inconveniences. They were facing an enemy that seemed relentless, intelligent, and unstoppable. The morning began with an eerie silence that felt unnatural, as if the entire town and the surrounding forests were holding their breath. People stepped outside cautiously, their eyes scanning for any sign of movement or danger. But the stillness offered no comfort. In the moments before chaos fully erupted, there was only a tense anticipation, a feeling that something huge was about to happen. It started with a sudden violent tremor that shook the town to its core. Buildings shuddered, glass shattered, and the earth itself seemed to roll beneath their feet. Streets cracked, trees fell, and parts of the town were immediately cut off from one another. The residents were thrown into confusion, screaming as they tried to reach family members or neighbors. Some stumbled, others were injured, and panic spread like wildfire. In that moment, Willow Creek realized that the danger was not just persistent, it was devastating. Ordinary responses, like taking cover or calling for help, were no longer sufficient. Survival required immediate, decisive action, and everyone had to adapt faster than they ever had before. Amid the chaos, the shadows that had been glimpsed earlier in the forests and streets now became fully apparent. They moved with speed and intelligence, as if they were hunting rather than merely existing. These dark forms weaved between buildings, slipping through alleys and around obstacles with uncanny precision. Witnessing them was terrifying. The townspeople could not understand what they were, where they came from, or why they targeted specific areas. Attempts to fend them off with any form of weapon were largely ineffective. People were forced to accept that conventional methods of defense would not save them. The shadows were not just a force of nature, they were something else, something beyond normal human understanding. In this moment of crisis, the story shifts to the arrival of the elite warriors. These individuals had been alerted to the situation and were mobilizing rapidly. Their arrival, however, would not be simple or immediate. They had to travel long distances, coordinate their approach, and prepare for a scenario unlike any previous mission. Each warrior was selected for extraordinary skills, physical prowess, and mental acuity. They had faced crises before, but nothing exactly like this. The stakes were higher than ever, and failure was not an option. As they approached Willow Creek, they analyzed every possible outcome, prepared strategies for multiple scenarios, and mentally braced themselves for what awaited. This preparation was not just tactical, it was psychological. The warriors knew that the residents' lives and, possibly far more, depended on their actions. Back in the town, residents were forced to take matters into their own hands while waiting for outside help. Families huddled together, trying to navigate streets that had been torn apart by tremors and debris. Smoke from fires, started either naturally or by collisions and accidents, filled the air and made breathing difficult. Water flooded certain areas as broken streams and pipes surged, turning streets into dangerous rivers. The townspeople improvised constantly. They used ropes to cross dangerous gaps, created barricades from fallen furniture, and guided others through partially destroyed buildings. Ordinary people were acting in extraordinary ways, driven by fear, desperation, and the instinct to protect loved ones. One of the most harrowing experiences came when the main school, which had become a temporary refuge for families, partially collapsed during the tremors. Children screamed, trapped under rubble, while teachers and parents fought to free them. Makeshift teams formed spontaneously, carrying children to safety, using every ounce of strength and ingenuity to overcome obstacles that seemed impossible. These acts of courage and resilience highlighted the human capacity to act selflessly under extreme pressure. Even in the midst of chaos, ordinary people became heroes, doing what they had never imagined they could. As the day progressed, the shadows' behavior became even more alarming. They began to coordinate, almost as if they were aware of the resonance movements. Attempts to flee were met with obstruction. Hiding places were discovered and attacked. The town, which had been a safe haven for generations, now felt like a trap. Panic escalated to fear bordering on terror. Residents could hear movement above, below, and around them. The air was thick with tension, and every sound, whether the creaking of a tree, the howl of the wind, or a distant shout, set hearts racing. In this extreme environment, every decision mattered. A misstep could result in injury or death, making survival a constant mental and physical struggle. Meanwhile, the elite warriors were now en route and approaching the town with precision. Their vehicles moved quickly but cautiously, taking into account the unstable terrain, possible hazards, and the unpredictable movements of the shadows. Each warrior relied on training that had honed reflexes and instincts to near perfection. They prepared for combat in the most challenging conditions imaginable. Unpredictable terrain, terrified civilians, and an enemy that defied all known tactics. As they drew closer, they could assess the situation through remote surveillance and intelligence reports, planning their entry into the town with extreme care. When the warriors finally arrived, they immediately assessed the damage and began executing their strategy. They moved with speed, coordination, and precision, neutralizing immediate threats while guiding civilians to safety. Their arrival brought a sense of hope, though it did not eliminate fear. The townspeople, though grateful, could not yet fully understand the magnitude of what was happening or the extraordinary abilities of the warriors. The first moments of contact were tense. Civilians clung to loved ones, watching in awe as the elite forces took control of the situation, facing dangers that ordinary people could not even comprehend. The battle that ensued was intense and high-stakes. Shadows attacked in unpredictable patterns, testing the skills of the warriors at every turn. The environment itself was hazardous. Fires, floods, and debris created obstacles that required constant adaptation. Warriors used advanced tools and tactics, but more importantly, they relied on instinct, experience, and teamwork. Each move was calculated yet responsive, designed to protect the civilians while neutralizing threats. The townspeople witnessed feats of courage that defied imagination: warriors leaping into danger to save trapped residents, coordinating attacks on the shadows, and using intelligence and quick thinking to prevent further disaster. During this critical moment, the residents of Willow Creek were forced to confront the fragility of their ordinary lives. Many had assumed the peaceful rhythm of the town would protect them indefinitely, but now they saw how quickly circumstances could change. They faced fear, uncertainty, and the raw reality of life and death stakes. Yet, amid the terror, a sense of unity emerged. Neighbors helped neighbors, shared resources, and trusted the elite warriors to lead. People who had once been timid or hesitant discovered courage they did not know they possessed. Ordinary citizens became participants in a battle far larger than themselves, and the town collectively learned the meaning of resilience under extreme conditions. As the battle continued, the critical nature of timing and decision-making became clear. Every moment mattered. A split-second delay could allow shadows to attack civilians or destabilize buildings further. The warriors adapted constantly, coordinating their moves while communicating with each other and with local guides who knew the town intimately. The residents contributed where they could, offering information about streets, structures, and people. This collaboration, combining the experience of the elite forces with the knowledge and courage of the townspeople, was essential to surviving the escalating threat. Willow Creek had changed irreversibly. The town had endured destruction, terror, and chaos on a scale previously unimaginable. Homes were damaged, streets blocked, and landmarks altered. Yet, despite the overwhelming force, the combination of human courage and elite intervention had prevented total catastrophe. People had witnessed firsthand what ordinary humans, when combined with extraordinary skill and determination, could accomplish. The critical moment had tested limits, challenged beliefs, and revealed the extraordinary potential that emerges when survival demands it. Willow Creek is battered, its residents shaken, yet a flicker of hope remains. The town has faced the escalation head-on, learning about both the fragility and strength of human life. The critical moment has passed, but its lessons linger in the face of overwhelming threat. Ordinary humans can rise to extraordinary challenges, and humanity's deadliest warriors exist to bridge the gap between despair and survival. The chaos in Willow Creek had reached its peak, but slowly, a shift began to occur. The elite warriors, trained for scenarios that most humans could barely imagine, had fully taken control of the situation. Their presence was decisive. While the town had faced destruction, fear, and panic. It was in this critical moment that strategy, courage, and skill started to turn the tide. The warriors moved like a coordinated force, each individual perfectly aware of their role, reacting instantly to threats, and protecting civilians with unmatched precision. Every step they took, every decision they made, was calculated to neutralize the danger while minimizing harm to the town and its people. From the first moment they engaged, the warriors focused on the primary objective: to eliminate the mysterious shadows that had terrorized Willow Creek. The shadows were not mindless. They moved with intelligence, adapting to attacks, and using the environment to their advantage. However, the warriors' training allowed them to anticipate and counter these movements. They relied not only on weapons and technology but also on deep understanding of behavior, strategy, and environmental dynamics. In small, coordinated teams, they flanked the shadows, cut off their paths, and protected civilians from sudden attacks. Their actions were precise, efficient, and relentless. Meanwhile, the residents of Willow Creek, who had spent days in terror, now witnessed the full power of the warriors. The town, once paralyzed by fear, began to see glimmers of hope. Families huddled together but could observe the elite forces moving with a calm intensity that inspired courage. Children, who had been terrified and unable to comprehend the danger, began to feel safer as they watched the disciplined, almost superhuman abilities of the warriors. Ordinary citizens who had been struggling to survive were suddenly able to breathe a little easier, knowing that capable hands were guiding the play's effort to reclaim the town. The warriors worked methodically to secure the most critical areas first. They rescued civilians trapped in buildings, guided families through dangerous streets, and cleared pathways that had been blocked by debris, fires, or collapsed structures. Their coordination was remarkable. One team would distract the shadows while another secured escape routes. Another would contain fires while a fourth focused on stabilizing weakened buildings. The teamwork was seamless, as if every member of the force instinctively knew what the others were doing. This level of skill and precision was awe-inspiring, and it quickly became clear to the residents that these were no ordinary defenders. They were the last hope for survival. That as the battle continued, the shadows' resistance began to falter. They were powerful, relentless, and intelligent, but they had underestimated the warriors' combination of strategy, strength, and resilience. The elite forces adapted to every trick, predicting movements, setting traps, and countering attacks with calculated efficiency. The warriors did not rely solely on brute force. They used their intelligence, observation skills, and understanding of behavior to manipulate the situation to their advantage. Every movement of the shadows was anticipated. Every attack counted, and slowly, the threat began to diminish. The town itself, though battered and scarred, started to regain a sense of structure. Streets that had been impassable were cleared, allowing residents to move safely and assist one another. Fires were contained or extinguished, and emergency shelters were reinforced to protect those most vulnerable. People who had been frozen in fear now began to act again, guided by the examples of bravery and discipline demonstrated by the elite warriors. In this phase, the town was not just being defended, it was slowly being reclaimed, piece by piece, through the combined efforts of trained warriors and courageous citizens. One of the most critical moments of the resolution came when the warriors identified the source of the shadow's energy and influence. Using advanced technology and deep analysis, they discovered that the threat had a central node and origin point that, if neutralized, would effectively collapse the coordinated attacks of the shadows. This was the turning point. While many warriors continued to defend civilians and manage immediate dangers, a specialized team moved to confront this origin directly. Their approach required extreme precision, speed, and coordination, because any mistake could cause the shadows to disperse and wreak havoc once more. The entire operation was high-stakes, balancing risk against the potential reward of finally ending the crisis. At the same time, ordinary residents contributed wherever possible. Some provided information about the town's layout and hazards. Others offered moral support, helped evacuate families, or assisted in clearing debris. The partnership between trained warriors and the civilians became a powerful force, demonstrating that survival in extreme conditions often requires both extraordinary skill and human cooperation. Witnessing their town being reclaimed, the residents gained confidence and determination, showing that even in the midst of terror, human resilience can rise to meet any challenge. The battle against the shadows culminated in a series of precise, coordinated actions. Warriors used advanced techniques and tools to neutralize the source of the threat, carefully dismantling the node while ensuring that the immediate area remained safe for civilians. The shadows, sensing the loss of their central control, became disoriented and scattered. Their attacks lost coordination, their movements became erratic, and for the first time, the town experienced a moment of calm amid the chaos. The relief was immediate and palpable. The source of danger had been removed, the shadows were neutralized, and Willow Creek had survived a threat that few could have imagined. As the dust settled, the town began to truly assess the aftermath. Buildings were damaged, some severely, and streets bore the scars of the conflict. Fires had been extinguished, but the smell of smoke lingered, reminding everyone of how close the town had come to destruction. Injuries were treated, temporary shelters were reinforced, and families reunited. The residents, though shaken, were also filled with gratitude and awe at what had just occurred. They had witnessed the incredible capabilities of humanity's elite warriors and had seen firsthand how courage, skill, and determination could overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. Though they were extraordinary in skill, strength, and intelligence, they were still human, capable of exhaustion, emotion, and care. They showed empathy as they guided terrified residents, displayed patience while calming panicked children, and acted selflessly to protect every life in the town. Their actions were not merely tactical. They were driven by a sense of responsibility and honor. This balance of professionalism and humanity was essential in the resolution, ensuring that Willow Creek was not only saved but also treated with dignity and care. Throughout the crisis, as the town slowly regained a sense of normalcy, residents began to reflect on what had happened. They realized how fragile their peaceful lives had been, how quickly order could give way to chaos, and how important courage and cooperation were in facing extreme challenges. While the immediate threat had been neutralized, the experience left a lasting impression, a mixture of respect for the warriors, pride in their own resilience, and an understanding of the unpredictable nature of life. They had survived an extraordinary ordeal, and the lessons learned would remain with them forever. Willow Creek was fundamentally changed. The town had endured destruction, fear, and chaos, but it had also experienced courage, unity, and extraordinary skill. The resolution was not just about defeating the shadows, it was about reclaiming the town, restoring hope, and demonstrating the power of human determination. The elite warriors had completed their mission, showing why humanity had invested in such extraordinary individuals, while the residents had proven that even ordinary people could rise to the occasion when faced with extreme danger. The immediate crisis is over, the town has survived, and the once paralyzed residents are beginning to rebuild. The combination of elite skill, human courage, and collective effort had turned the tide. The stage is now set for the final phase, where reflection and aftermath will show how the events of Willow Creek leave a lasting impact on both the town and the understanding of humanity's resilience and capacity for bravery. The resolution demonstrates that even in the darkest moments, with preparation, courage, and cooperation, humanity can overcome unimaginable threats and emerge stronger. The battle had ended, the shadows were gone, and Willow Creek had survived a threat that had once seemed unstoppable. Yet, the story did not conclude with a simple relief of survival. The town, its residents, and even the elite warriors who had fought to protect them were left to reckon with the aftermath of an extraordinary ordeal. The physical destruction was only one part of the impact. Homes had been damaged or destroyed, streets were scarred, and the natural landscape bore the marks of chaos. Fires had charred buildings, fallen trees blocked paths, and debris cluttered every corner. The recovery process would be long, and the residents understood that returning to their former sense of normalcy would require effort, patience, and community spirit. In the immediate aftermath, the town worked together as never before. Residents formed teams to clear debris, repair structures, and restore essential services. Farmers and builders joined forces, neighbors helped neighbors, and every individual contributed according to their ability. Children, who had witnessed events far beyond their understanding, assisted in small ways, carrying supplies, or helping to organize temporary shelters. Adults who had been terrified the day before now discovered reserves of strength and courage they had never realized they possessed. The act of rebuilding became more than a necessity, became a statement of resilience, a testament to the human spirit's ability to recover and rebuild, even after facing overwhelming danger. While the physical work was ongoing, the emotional and psychological impact of the events was even more profound. The residents of Willow Creek had faced fear and uncertainty at levels most people would never encounter in their lifetimes. Families and friends had been tested under extreme stress, confronted with the very real possibility of death or injury, and forced to make decisions that could save or endanger lives. The trauma of those experiences lingered even as safety returned. People had nightmares, anxiety persisted, and some struggled with feelings of helplessness despite the fact that they had survived. The events created a collective memory of terror, courage, and survival that would shape the town's identity for generations. The elite warriors, though extraordinary in skill and resilience, also faced their own reflections in the aftermath. They had entered Willow Creek under extreme conditions, confronted an enemy that defied conventional understanding, and performed their duties with courage and precision. While they were trained to handle life-and-death scenarios, the mission had left an imprint on them as well. They had witnessed the vulnerability and bravery of ordinary humans in moments of extreme stress, and they had seen firsthand the strength of a community that refused to surrender to fear. Though their focus remained on the next mission, they took with them the knowledge that their intervention had changed lives, saved families, and preserved a town that would have otherwise been devastated. One of the most significant aspects of the aftermath was the bond formed between the warriors and the residents. In moments of extreme danger, trust had been established, mutual respect developed, and shared experiences created an unbreakable connection. The townspeople were no longer simply observers of extraordinary skill, they had been participants, witnesses, and beneficiaries of courage in action. The warriors had not only neutralized the threat but had also inspired the residents, demonstrating that bravery, intelligence, and careful planning could overcome even the most terrifying challenges. This connection left a lasting impression on Willow Creek, creating stories and memories that would be recounted for years. The town itself began to transform in subtle yet meaningful ways. Public spaces were rebuilt stronger and safer. Streets were cleared and reorganized, and emergency preparedness became a central focus. Residents took lessons from the events to heart, understanding that while peace is precious, it is also fragile, and vigilance and preparation are essential. Children learned from the adults' courage, absorbing lessons about resilience, cooperation, and the importance of acting selflessly in times of crisis. Adults, too, gained a renewed sense of purpose and community, recognizing that survival depends not only on individual skill, but also on unity and collaboration. Stories of heroism became central to the town's culture. Teachers recounted the bravery of children who had acted decisively. Shopkeepers shared tales of neighbors helping one another under impossible conditions, and families honored the courage of those who risked their lives to protect others. These stories were not exaggerated, they were real accounts of human strength under pressure. They became part of the town's identity, a source of pride, and a reminder of what humanity is capable of when confronted with unimaginable danger. Even ordinary acts, carrying a neighbor to safety, guiding a lost child, or providing comfort in a moment of panic were celebrated, showing that heroism does not always require extraordinary skill, but often arises from compassion, determination, and presence of mind. As the town rebuilt, gratitude for the elite warriors grew. They had risked their lives to protect people they did not know, intervening in a situation that could have destroyed the community. While some of the warriors departed quietly, returning to their duties elsewhere, the impression they left on Willow Creek was profound. The residents had seen what human skill, courage, and training could achieve, and this knowledge gave them confidence in humanity's capacity to overcome danger. The story of Willow Creek became an example of the extraordinary potential that emerges when preparation, skill, and courage intersect at precisely the right moment. The aftermath also brought reflection on the fragility of ordinary life. The residents realized how quickly a routine, peaceful existence could be disrupted. The events had revealed vulnerabilities, both in the physical infrastructure of the town and in the assumptions people made about safety. This awareness, while sobering, also created opportunities for growth. Willow Creek became a community more connected, more prepared, and more resilient. Residents installed better safety measures, organized emergency teams, and maintained closer communication with each other. The crisis had forged a new sense of responsibility, one rooted in the understanding that survival is not guaranteed, and that proactive measures can save lives. The emotional recovery was intertwined with practical rebuilding. Families who had been separated or trapped during the attack reunited, sharing stories of narrow escapes and acts of courage. Children, once terrified, began to play again, slowly reclaiming innocence lost during the crisis. Adults worked tirelessly to restore homes, farms, and businesses, each act of reconstruction symbolizing triumph over fear and chaos. The collective effort fostered a sense of pride and accomplishment, reinforcing the understanding that human strength lies not just in individual skill, but in collaboration, resilience, and shared purpose. As time passed, Willow Creek began to integrate the lessons learned from the experience. Schools incorporated emergency preparedness into their routines, teaching children practical skills and strategies for survival. Community meetings emphasized coordination, communication, and resource sharing. Local authorities and residents worked closely to create contingency plans for future threats. The town had survived a once-in-a-lifetime crisis, but it emerged with knowledge, wisdom, and resilience that would protect it in the future. The events had changed Willow Creek forever, shaping it into a stronger, more aware, and more capable community. Beyond the town itself, the story of Willow Creek reached neighboring areas, inspiring others with the accounts of bravery, resilience, and human determination. News of the elite warriors' intervention highlighted the importance of preparation, skill, and courage, showing that even ordinary communities could survive extraordinary threats when guided by expertise and human cooperation. The events underscored that survival is not merely a matter of chance, it is the result of courage, strategy, and unity. Willow Creek became a symbol of hope, demonstrating that humanity could rise to meet even the most formidable dangers. For the residents, personal reflections became a central part of life after the crisis. Each individual considered their own response, their fears, and their acts of bravery. Parents reflected on how they had protected their children, teachers on how they had guided students to safety, and young adults on how they had contributed in moments of panic. The experience offered insight into human potential, the ability to act decisively under pressure, to rise above fear, and to find strength in adversity. It reinforced the notion that every person has the capacity for courage, even when confronted with forces beyond their comprehension. The elite warriors, meanwhile, departed Willow Creek with the knowledge that their mission had succeeded. They had neutralized the threat, saved countless lives, and restored order to a town that had been on the brink of destruction. Yet, their work extended beyond mere action. They had provided an example, a living demonstration of skill, strategy, and bravery that the residents would carry with them for the rest of their lives. Their presence left an enduring mark on Willow Creek, reminding everyone that preparedness, training, and courage could change the outcome of even the most dire situations. As months passed, Willow Creek fully embraced the lessons of the crisis. The streets were repaired, homes rebuilt, and life began to feel familiar again, though never exactly as it had been before. The town had changed, not just physically but emotionally and psychologically. Residents carried a deeper appreciation for life, community, and the extraordinary potential of human courage. Children who had once played freely without understanding danger now understood the importance of vigilance and cooperation. Adults who had relied on routine learned to adapt, respond, and act decisively under pressure. Willow Creek had been transformed into a town that would never take safety or peace for granted again. Ultimately, the aftermath and reflection showed that survival was only part of the story. The real victory lay in resilience, unity, and the capacity of humans to rise above fear. Willow Creek had faced overwhelming danger, endured destruction, and witnessed extraordinary skill in action. The residents had learned about courage, cooperation, and the strength of the human spirit. The elite warriors had demonstrated what preparation, training, and bravery could achieve, and the town itself had emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient, ready to face the future with knowledge, courage, and unity. The events became a permanent part of Willow Creek's history, shaping its identity and leaving an indelible mark on every person who had survived and contributed to the town's salvation. In the end, Willow Creek stood as a symbol of hope, courage, and the extraordinary power of humanity when confronted with unimaginable danger. Life resumed, but the lessons of bravery, sacrifice, and cooperation endured. Ordinary people had performed extraordinary acts. Elite warriors had fulfilled their purpose, and the town had survived a crisis that had tested every limit. The reflection of this experience became part of the town's legacy, reminding everyone that even in the darkest moments, humanity can rise, protect itself, and emerge stronger than before.